without any further ado, I think we will launch into the specific questions that we have for some of our guests here. And I guess I want to start just by unpacking the basics, because, I think it's easy for us to forget how little the average, community member knows about zoning and land use issues. But basically what the developer is trying to do to get the retirement community built is that piece of land needs to be rezoned into something called a community enhancement floating zone, a CEF zone. Either Alan or Ginny, whoever wants to take it, could you please explain what a CEF zone is and why Erickson needs to get that permit and why they maybe shouldn't, maybe why they don't meet the criteria for that?
One of the issues is the extension of the PSA. There's a planned service area. The PSA is really not supposed to be expanded unless there is a comprehensive analysis of why the metropolitan boundary should be expanded. And that was not done. It was done just kind of as an afterthought by the last county council to enable a community, a CCRC, a community retirement community that Jenny will talk about. But then it expanded beyond that. So there are a lot of questions about how this happened and the procedures that were avoided or ignored, or community input was not given full consideration. And that is continuing. And that is one of the concerns that we have going forward, not only in this development, but in others. So it gets back to an improper expansion of the PSA. It's supposed to end in October and it was extended for another year, and that's another problem. So that's one. The community, the CEF, Community Enhancement Floating Zone, has a lot of problems because an enhancement is not a defined criteria. It's basically something that is undefined, and an enhancement is whatever the developers consider there to be an enhancement. There is no definition of what an enhancement is, and the enhancements with regard to this particular development really do not fit the qualifications among many other criteria that have not been adequately expressed to justify this community enhancement floating zone. But Jenny has a lot more things to say about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just add to what Alan's talking about. When I was on the zoning board a long time ago, it was very simple. The county, through a real public process, had to declare this land being X use, et cetera. And if a developer wanted to change it, one, you knew who the developer was, and two, they had approved change or mistake, change in the neighborhood, or the zoning board had made a mistake at that time, and therefore you needed to change it to something else. This floating zone is problematic in many ways. The other thing that bothers me is, again, as I said, in the past, you knew who the developer was. I asked many times, as did others, is Erickson the developer? And I could never get an answer. Erickson is a management firm, and they've got a good reputation as a management firm in long-term care. That's not important to this issue, quite frankly. The issue is zoning. So I asked who are the investors, the guys that are really going to make the big bucks with this investment. And I was told by their attorney, it's none of my business, or it's none of any of. Why do we want to know about that? We want to know because the taxpayers have a right to know who they're dealing with. It's really very simple. These people are making promises by using Erickson as a spokesperson, telling you they're going to do parkland, they're going to do dog parks, they're going to do things, but they never have shown the real plans as to exactly what it'll look like so that the zoning board would approve exactly what you're getting. It's a bait and switch thing, and I think it's deplorable. So I guess the issue is you don't know who you're dealing with. Now, the good news for the investors is they've gone from rural zoning, which is very little development, to the potential for 1,440 acres, units. Well, if the CCRC doesn't work, and we'll talk about that later, why I think it's got real problems, but if it doesn't, the good news for Clarksville is they get 1,440 potential rental apartments, and the affordable housing will fit in. So the county will get more affordable housing, and you'll get 1,440 apartments in an area where you don't have, you need maybe more rental apartments for Clarksville. So I think the people need to pay attention to who are you dealing with, and can you trust them? And is this regulation enforceable? And the way it's set up, no, it is not. And the zoning board is, if they don't put a lot of very tight criteria on this, we could be taken for a ride. Thank you.
So let me ask a follow-up question on that, because so there were a couple of issues here. So one is the CF zoning criteria, and the other is the owners behind this project. So the questions behind the question of the owners behind the project. When we look at the CF criteria, the current zoning category of the parcel is, I believe it allows for 8 or so units to be built in the land as it is. So the developer proposes to make certain enhancements per the CF criteria, the CF or the CF zoning requirement, and they're saying that they're claiming that the CF the enhancements that they're proposing are proportional to the project that they're proposing. So why is that a problem? Can someone, so Alan or Ginny, could you describe some of the issues with that?
Well, there are several issues with that. One is the CEF is supposed to enhance the underlying zone that is being imposed upon. The underlying zone is agricultural preserve. It's farming. How does 1,442 units on top of environmentally sensitive land really enhance the land value? It does not. It enriches investors. And that is not the underlying criteria, which is in the general plan of Howard County. So the general plan of Howard County is really being controverted by this concept that CEF has to be determined by criteria that are really not included in the best interest of the citizens of Howard County.
Just let me add to that. One example that shows you how ludicrous this whole thing is: a dog park. People have tried to get an idea: is this for small dogs, large dogs, exactly what size, etc. Well, just picture somebody walking their dog across 108 near Shepherd's Lane in order to allow it to use the dog park. Maybe you'll do that, or maybe you'll drive your dog over. I don't know, but more than likely, the residents of either the CCRC or the apartment complex, depending on how it turns out, will walk their dog. So the dog park may be a very good idea for the development, for the 1,440 unit development. That's just one example.
Well, the other example was the trails. They said they were going to build some trails that will facilitate the students going to their dwelling units. And most of the residences are on the other side of Route 108. So in order to use the trails, the students from the elementary school and the high school have to cross 108, not only once, but twice to use the trail. And that's a hazard. It's a safety hazard. So I think that that's another misnomer that this is an enhancement to the community. It's not.
And
can I throw in here that this project and projects just like it up and down this watershed are very opportunistic, and the environment is the last thing that the developers have taken into account. As Ginny's pointed out, there's very little transparency on this project. You, the citizens of Howard County, need to be really concerned about projects like this because the implications are vast. I mean, you have subject matter experts from several different lenses, but let's be clear, this particular project does have some real issues as far as how it will affect the quality of life for people near and around the site, the quality of life and the quality of water to the south, downriver, downstream, you know, the old proverbial downstream. You know, I know that Dave's going to talk to us about traffic, and there are all kinds of procedural and zoning and other stuff. And I know people get bored hearing procedural and zoning stuff. The real deal here is this is a problematic project that has a lot of different burrs and problems attached to it in terms of the livability of the county and the future of this watershed. I just want to kind of throw that out there to kind of redirect this, because I don't want people to get too caught in the weeds of the, you know, Howard County procedures and laws and zoning stuff. I just had to throw that in there.
Well, just to follow up on that, and that is another thing, like Jenny was saying, one of those things that the citizens are not supposed to know about is there a better place for this? Everybody thinks that, a retirement community would be a good thing for the aging population in Howard County. Well, that's great. But when we ask, well, isn't there a better place in Howard County rather than putting this in environmentally sensitive ground, which is leading to our drinking water? And oh no, that's excluded from consideration in this project, and that is totally wrong. Totally wrong.
Yeah, and thank you for, you know, pointing that out, Fred. You know, really recentering this because, yeah, I think a lot of this stuff can go over people's heads sometimes, and it's very important. So we don't want people to lose interest. So to wrap up the community enhancement floating zone thing, though, so I guess by my understanding, a CEF zone is basically when you want to use land for a different purpose than it was originally zoned for. So you have to get approval for that, and you get approval by basically saying, hey, in exchange for rezoning the land, we're going to offer several projects which will benefit the community, essentially. So I wanted to kind of explain that, because I don't know if we did explain that to people who don't know. But to wrap that up, I'd be curious, what are, aside from the dog park and the trails, are there any other examples of things that the developer is offering to justify the CEF, other projects, and are there flaws in how they're being presented? Because I think, Ginny, listening to your testimony, you said a lot of the things that they're offering as amenities to justify the community enhancement, they're not necessarily going to be footing the bill for it. It's going to be the county that's footing the bill for it. So I wanted to raise that point, because that's one of the claims that was made in that blog smearing us, is that the project has no taxpayer grants or subsidies. But so Ginny or Alan, could you maybe talk on what some of the community enhancement stuff that they're offering, and whether that's, you know, who's going to be paying for that stuff potentially?
Well, Jenny, I thought you were good at that. For example, the trail and the dog park, and they're also going to have a playground, among other things. In 2014, there was a fueling station task force report that said that these public facilities, a dog park and a playground, should never be located next to a gas station. So, you know, it just fails good planning. And that's one of the problems in Howard County, is there is no vision, there is no good plan for where projects should be located. It seems to be that when somebody proposes a project on a particular piece of land, there's no consideration for how does it fit into the whole picture? Where does it fit into the big pictures? There's no consideration of the big picture prospect. So you need to think about all those little factors about what's the best location and does it fit into those considerations. And the developers are able to say, oh, we're going to put this in, but then they shift the responsibility for maintenance and continuation to the county. So then it falls into the county responsibility to pay for what the developer reaps the benefit from.